The next episode of Ask Armin is something highly requested. As you guys know, I am a huge fan of Power Rangers, so with that in mind, we know that Disney is in the early stages of once again bringing us Power Rangers. So today, we're going to talk about how I would reboot the Power Rangers brand under Disney. And just so you're aware, this will be woke because Power Rangers are woke. Okay, I think most of you know how this works. This is essentially wrestling fantasy booking. I am fantasy booking how I would reboot Power Rangers. If you don't agree with me, if you don't like it, if you have a different opinion, I would love to hear what your version of Power Rangers is. Mine is probably going to be divisive. If you're a huge fan of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and you buy all the products based on it and ignore every other brand of Power Rangers, I'm sorry to tell you, you're gonna hate my pitch. So you can dislike the video and leave now because I'm not focusing on Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. So with that out of the way, let's get into how I would reboot the Power Rangers. So I think most people are familiar with some concept of Power Rangers, the ideas behind it, and of course the various different franchises. As I said, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers always gets the brunt of action figures, products, and everything, while all the other versions, from Dino Thunder to SPD, which are two of my favorites, the highly underrated Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, along with the likes of Lightspeed Rescue, I think are something that's a little bit more unique and different, and I like those. But for the purposes of this, what we're going to be doing is just talking about the general direction I would take it in. And the first thing I'm going to say is going to be controversial. Ignore all of the other Power Rangers. Literally all of them. All of these shows you see going by, they don't exist in this continuity. This is a clean reboot from the start. When we look at the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and their lasting legacy, yes, it was the first one, it was nostalgic, and of course it was the one that had the most amount of fans, and then by Zeo and Turbo, most people fell off. And those of us that stuck around saw some pretty interesting and unique and certainly super cool adaptations of the Sentai footage. Some of them worked better than others. Others we better not talk about. But what was great about all these different versions is that they offered something unique, something different. And many times when they would go back to the well and try to redo what we saw before, it kind of, I don't know, it didn't really click with fans. Sure, the merchandise sells. But again, it all goes back to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, pump it out and just sell nostalgia. You can't live off nostalgia forever. And I think we saw that with the reboot of Power Rangers from, 7, 8 years ago, or whatever it was. And even the comics based on the Power Rangers with the Omega Rangers and stuff, very cool, but again, in the same continuity. I don't want to deal with any of that, personally. So, here's what I'm proposing. Since this is going to be a all US creation by Disney, we need to take our mindset out of Japanese Sentai footage. We need to completely abandon that logic, that mentality, that creative process. We got to focus on United States product, right? That Disney is going to be behind. That's not connected to anything. That's a fresh new take for a whole new generation. That's also going to pull in nostalgia. So what I'm saying is you're going to have to really look at the bigger picture of all of Power Rangers so far and all of Sentai, and then boil it down to what actually works. What is the core of Power Rangers? So what I'm saying is you need either a team of 3 to 5 members. I don't care how many members there are. It doesn't matter who's what color, who's the Red Ranger. I don't care if the Red Ranger is Asian or a woman. I'm just saying that we need to boil it down to a couple familiar things. The color of the Rangers in their suits should be one of them. And that should be familiar. It should pull in some sort of nostalgia. Now, at the same time, you have to look at the bigger picture here in regards to what is going to sell merchandise and have a lot of push behind it. So when you look at the broad, appeal of Power Rangers and what appeals to mainstream, especially children, one takeaway, and this is key, is of course, what do kids want to play with? Dinosaurs. So that is essentially the one element you're going to use from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers as your base, because you want to start off with that. Now, I propose that we need to simplify the mythos. And we need to do this differently. Again, we got to pull from the familiar, but take elements of something else. So my idea would be to essentially take somebody like Power Rangers Zeo, the Machine Empire, who is invading Earth, and do them as the first villains that sets up the bigger story. Now, in this, I would also include Zordon. But Zordon, like we saw in the Power Rangers Reboot movie, he would be a survivor of an old war that was fought thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of years ago on another planet, and they thought they, defeated everybody, and he was sort of like the last survivor of the final war. And he escaped to Earth, where he figured nobody would find him. But, of course, after a long trek and after, searching for him, they do find him. So the Machine Empire starts the attack on Earth. This is when Zordon and his friend, Robot, Alpha 5, are going to have to be tasked with putting together a team of teenagers. Teenagers are important here because you need to keep that vibe. So as the Machine Empire is slowly heading towards Earth, and they launch their first wave attack. This is like the proto-attack. They sent out essentially, scouts, sort of like the opening of Empire Strikes Back. They sent a couple people and like a henchman down to various planets. This is what our season is largely based on. This small little contingent of Machine Empire villains that were sent here by the big villain, right? But we'll get to that later on. Because what I'm proposing is, you're doing 10 to 12 episode first season, They're not going to do 50 episodes for a year, because that's not feasible. That was feasible with Sentai footage. So essentially, you're building up these little henchmen as the big bads of the first season to establish the Machine Empire will be here because we sent them the message that we found you. So at the same time, the Power Rangers need to get their powers, and Zordon, since he's been here for literally millions and millions of years after this great war and everything and his plan's destruction, he was able to see who were the most powerful creatures on Earth. That's why we have dinosaurs and things like that. So the Power Rangers, I would say maybe 5 of them, let's go with 5, standard 5, are given the proper Zords. Now, I would remix it a bit. It doesn't have to be a pterodactyl. You can do something else. Does it have to be a T-Rex? Yes, because T-Rexes sell. Do we really need a Triceratops? Maybe, but why not like a Stegosaurus or something, right? Change it up a bit. Just approach it differently. And speaking of approaching it differently, the thing I would do is that one of the henchmen for the Machine Empire is a aspiring villain trying to find his footing, who's Lord Zed. He was the one that was sent down, and he wants to really seize power for himself. And this is how we're going to start to sow the seeds of inner conflict between various factions in space. And Zed, in my continuity, we would reveal that him and Zordon were both Rangers long ago. Now it gives us a personal stake. Zed has essentially been masking himself as a surviving old Ranger, but he blames Zordon for the destruction of their planet. He blames Zordon for not being able to stop everybody, and he's essentially trying to overthrow from within. This gives him a personal conflict with not just Zordon, but also the Machine Empire. So now we got turmoil, and we don't know what could happen. Now again, I know a lot of you are going to be pissed at this. We're remixing. We're doing something different. We're taking a different approach to this. Because we will then find out, in my continuity, right towards the end, that Zordon actually has been shielding someone from Zed suspecting that he survived. And people from their planet have more or less slow aging. Think of like the Asgardians, right? What happens is that Zordon has actually been hiding Zed's son, who ends up becoming the Sixth Ranger during the series, right towards the end to set up the second season. Because by the time the Machine Empire shows up at the end of the season, I would completely just go off the wall and do a full-scale invasion of Earth. But now we got personal turmoil. We got Zed realizing that Zordon was maybe in the right and he saved his son. We then have the Machine Empire descending upon Earth, but Zed realizing, hold up, what if I was in the wrong, right? So now everybody's got these motivations. We got the teenagers, right? They want to protect their planet. They're not sure that they can. They're not sure they're up to the task because they've seen and learned about the legendary wars that were fought. As a matter of fact, we're going to tie all this into ancient civilizations on Earth. So, for example, the pyramids. Strangely enough, they line up with Orion's belt. Well, we're going to establish that this was sort of like a message. And if you go to the stars on Orion's belt and you look at the planets there, they essentially point to another coordinate that leads you all the way back to where it all began. Essentially, with the creation of the universe, good and evil was born, and there's always a yin and yang, and it will never be over. So now we're pulling in even ancient mythology and all these stories about, oh, the Anunnaki, they were giants. They didn't know how to convey what they were seeing, which was essentially different eras of Power Rangers, more or less trying to pass on their knowledge, but it just didn't work. So now you've grounded everything in a real mythology and real stories that we have here on Earth, but also you're playing with the ideas of, was Zeus and these other gods potentially Rangers, or is this just stories passed on from previous generations from other planets, and they left these messages for us? So now you can pull in pretty much anything as a concept going forward. And with that, then by the end of the season, you've kind of dropped this on us. You're getting to season 2. You now got a free, clean slate to do whatever you want. So anything you want to do with Rangers based on anything, you can do it. You can spin it off however. And the concept is then simple. It's simplified, it's a reboot, there's familiar, there's remixing, it makes you ask questions. Sort of like the Goosebumps reboot on Disney+, which I absolutely loved. They took concepts, ideas in the books, remixed just about everything, and then they proceeded to just tell great stories and loosely adapt what we had before. You kind of do that here, and I think it would work, honestly. And as long as the fans are willing to give something a chance that's not Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and set expectations right, just think of the amount of merchandise you can sell. And that's really going to be the key to this. The merchandise that they can sell. And now you've opened up the entire history of the planet while also pulling in the old ancient astronaut theory, which you can play around with. Literally, the universe of infinite possibilities is now there to do any single story or character that you want. Thank you for checking out that video, and thank you for your continued support. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, do whatever you will, and if you're so inclined and would like some additional content from us, which includes unfiltered content and bonus discussions, we do offer exclusively in our member section. We hope to see you there. So thank you for watching, and have a good one.